For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shabib, and I'm a sophomore here at Benedictine. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go through briefly what our Islamic theme is for Islamic awareness for this year, and then we'll start with a recitation of the Quran, followed by a translation, and then we'll get into it. And so this year, we decided with the theme built upon 5, going back to the 5 basic pillars or principles of Islam. Usually those that spend time learning with teachers, those that spend a lot of time in the masjid, at the mosque, and we get really deep in our studies, we kind of forget what is the foundation of our religion teach us. We get into spirituality, we get into more complicated teaching, but what is the foundation? What is that for example, if somebody that isn't Muslim, they start from a fresh page, what will we teach them? What are the basics of religion? And so we go back to the 5 pillars of Islam, which are your faith, which is your testification of faith, the shahada, testifying that there's no God but God and the Prophet Muhammad is his prophet. And then prayer, fasting, charity, and hajj. And these are the 5 principles that each and every Muslim knows are the 5 pillars of Islam, and those are the basics. Those are the basics, the fundamentals that we go through. And so this is our week. We have our dawah table set up. We have an event every evening. We have our speakers and programs going on. And so if you guys have any questions, you guys can ask anything, I'm sure. Inshallah, I'm going to ask Amir to come up and recite a few verses of the Quran, and then Naila to do the translation, and then I'll explain, I'll get into what the program is going to be today.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم. نزل عليك الكتاب بالحق مصدقا لما بين يديه وأنزل التوراة والإنجيل من قبل هدى للناس وأنزل الفرقان. إن الذين كفروا بآيات الله لهم عذاب شديد والله عزيز ذو انتقام. إن الله لا يخفى عليه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء. هو الذي يصوركم في الأرحام كيف يشاء. لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم. هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات. فأما الذين في قلوبهم زيغ فيتبعون ما تشابه منه ابتغاء الفتنة وابتغاء تأويله وما يعلم تأويله إلا الله. والراسخون في العلم يقولون آمنا به كل من عند ربنا وما يذكر إلا أولو الألباب. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا إنك جامع الناس ليوم لا ريب فيه إن الله لا يخلف الميعاد.
Alif Lam Mim. Allah, there is no God but He, the alive, the all-sustaining. He has revealed to you the book with the truth, confirming what has been before it, and has sent down the Torah and the Injil. Earlier to give guidance to mankind, and has sent down the Furqan, the criterion of right and wrong. Surely those who have rejected the verses of Allah, for them there is severe punishment. Allah is mighty, the Lord of retribution. Surely Allah is such that nothing is hidden from Him, neither in the earth nor in the sky. He is the one who shapes you in the wombs as He likes. There is no God but He, the mighty, the wise. He is the one who has revealed to you the book. Out of it there are verses that are muhkamat, which are the principal verses of the book, and some others are mutashabihat, whose definite meanings are unknown. Now those who have perversity in their hearts go after such part of it as is mutashabih, seeking to create discord, and searching for its interpretation that meets their desires, while no one with his help to whomsoever he wills. Indeed, there is a lesson therein for those who have eyes. Our Lord, do not let our hearts deviate from the right path after you have given us guidance, and bestow upon us mercy from your own. Surely you and you alone are the one who bestows in abundance. Our Lord, you are going to assemble all the people on a day in the occurrence of which there is no doubt. Really, Allah does not back out of His promise.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm just going to explain a little bit of what we're doing tonight, and then we'll start. So we had Dr. Jalil scheduled to talk today. Unfortunately, he had to cancel last minute, and so we kind of shook it up a little bit, something a little different. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm kind of leading a discussion, and I'm going to make it as interactive as possible. So I have kind of a guide that goes through what faith is and how we apply it in our everyday lives, and what's the true essence of faith. And so I'm going to be asking a few people that have been pre-selected. So Maz, Zaki, Sister Jenna, and Zainab. And we're going to be kind of going to them as our panelists to kind of get their thoughts, and then I will open up the floor and ask everybody what their thoughts are and if anyone would like to share or contribute. And so today's event is about faith, and as Muslims we call that shahada, we call that the testification of faith, and it's very simple. The concept of faith is very, very complicated. It's very, very sophisticated, but when we say what is the actual faith, when you're fulfilling the pillar of faith, what exactly do you mean by that? So as a Muslim, when we say we're fulfilling the pillar of faith, we believe in the verse, or in the saying, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, which means that there's no God but God Himself, that God has no partners, God is one in His creation, God is one with no partners, and there's no equal separation or divisions of God. We believe in one whole, one wholesome, the one true God, and we believe that the Prophet Muhammad is His final messenger. And so if anybody attended the interfaith panel discussion today, some of the things that I mentioned were we have the three monotheistic faiths of Judaism and Christianity and then Islam chronologically, and each one has a distinct prophet that they use to recognize that faith. And so everyone knows the story of Musa Islam, Moses, in terms of the people, the Hebrews or the Jews, and then Jesus as a symbol for Christianity, and then the final prophet Muhammad, who is the final prophet of Islam and the last prophet. And so when we are fulfilling the last pillar of faith, when we're saying that we're fulfilling this pillar and we have accomplished it, when we say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan rasulullah, we're fulfilling that pillar. But then it's also one of the most complicated pillars, is because it's so, you can go so deep into it to understand it, to apply it, and to actually internalize it as opposed to just believing it. And so the first thing I wanted to start with is, what exactly is faith? One of my teachers has given a good example, is that, for example, you have a snake, and you're afraid of that snake, and because you know that snake can harm you, but do you really fear that snake? And there's a stark difference between those two things. The snake can harm you, it can bite you, it can kill you, so you're afraid of that snake, but do you truly fear that snake? Do you, in your heart, actually fear that snake? And then faith goes the same way, is that if I tell you something, you can believe me, or you can disagree with me, but either you believe something I tell you, or you believe something with your heart, with your heart. And that's that's the transition that we all, as Muslims, have to make, and people of any faith, is that when you're growing up, when you're maturing into an adult, you've been told these things your whole life. But when you actually get to adolescence and adulthood, you actually have to think about and reflect on these ideas and think, do I really believe this? Does this make sense to me? Is it logical? Is it is my heart content with this? Am I willing to live my whole life on this as the truth that I hold to myself? And so, that's the question of faith, and the theme of faith keeps coming up, over and over again in every religion, because that's the ultimate truth. You're looking for the ultimate truth. You're looking for, what gives my soul, peace. And so, you keep going back to faith. And so the first question I wanted to ask was, specifically Islam. What exactly defines faith? What is faith? And what is the true essence of faith? So, Zaki, would you like to please continue?
So, yes, if we're talking about what is faith, on a general kind of basis, if we're talking about faith, I think we can say that faith is really just what works for you. Like what works for you in this life. Faith is something that you can use to rationalize the things that are happening around you. So for example, everyone in this day and age, everyone has to go through some sort of hardship. Everyone has to see the hardships that are going and happening in the world. And so what faith does, really at the end of the day, we can have long spiritual discussions about how faith elevates your heart to a lofty position, it sublimes, makes you a sublime human being. But essentially at the end of the day, faith is about what allows you to move through life while remaining a sane human being. But on a more specific basis in Islam, I think that faith is to worship with your mind, right? Because faith is something that you have to believe, right? It's knowing with your mind that there is a God. It's knowing with your mind that there is reason to the madness that is the world, right? So on a larger scale, faith is what we can take from life and what makes sense for us, right? Whether that be Hinduism, whether that be becoming an atheist, right? Because atheism in itself is a faith, right? Whether that be becoming Judaism, right? That's what makes sense in our life. But on an Islamic basis, I think Islam is to worship with your mind, and knowing that God is there, knowing that God has a plan, knowing that there is a day of judgment, the 6 pillars of faith, and truly believing that internally in your heart and in your mind.
And so this takes me to my next point. A lot of us, if I go on and ask, a lot of us have had the same experiences. We go to a place of worship, we go to either a church or synagogue or mosque, and a lot of us have the experience of going to the mosque, on a weekly or not, if not, multiple times during the week. And so some of the things that I've seen and some of the stories that I want to share is when we're talking about faith is a personal experience. I can't project that on somebody, or I can't judge somebody, or decide, does this person have faith, or this person's lacking faith, or anything in between. And so, for example, when I go to the mosque myself, I've had experiences where I've seen older people who have been worshiping their entire lives, that have been working there in their 60s or 70s, that are just, they're closer to the end of their life than they are to the beginning. And so you see like the traditional, you see their beard, you see their traditional clothing, you see their, their kufi, you see their, their hands rolled up to their ankles, following the perfect outward sunnah, or the way of the Prophet. And then in contrast, I've seen, for example, some people, our age, I've seen, a couple of my buddies in high school, and even now, and people that are older than me, they come to the masjid and you see them praying, Jummah, or praying any prayer throughout the day. Big, tall, athletic, a tight shirt, earrings, a cool haircut, and tattoos. And I've seen, these people being indirectly judged by those that are older, those that are more experienced, those that are more knowledgeable. And so this brings me to my next question. Is faith an internal element or is it external? Which means that, is there an element to faith which is external? Can I show that I'm faithful or I have faith just by the way that I look? Or is it an internal thing? Because I've seen people that look like they don't have any faith, but I've seen them cry. I've seen them cry and pray and supplicate to God. And on the other hand, I've seen people that, like I mentioned before, people that are dressed religiously, that are dressed to appear pious, but they'll yell at children, or they'll strike a child, or they'll be disrespectful to those that are younger. You know, our religion teaches us to be respectful to not only those that are older than us, but also younger than us. And so if I see somebody that looks learned and they are disrespectful to children, you know, what does that say? And so my next question is faith an internal element or is it an external?
Faith. First of all, I kind of want to go back to the previous question, but I would say that faith is, to me, external, but not physically. So what I would mention is a story that a teacher has mentioned. He said that faith to people is unification, because when you see people together, that's what creates faith. So for example, people gathering in this room together, it's faith. When you see people doing things together in a congregation, you see people making prayers together, when you see people doing anything together, it's a form of faith, and it's beautiful, because humans love to see things that are in unification. So when we see people standing together, bowing together, praying together, playing basketball together, going out together, anything at all, but when you see people doing stuff together, it creates a sense of faith. So to me, I would say externally, but not to the extent of physicality, because obviously you can judge a person based off of how he looks. You know, you can easily do that. But, and this is an example, so this guy's teaching a class, right? It's a very spiritual class about Islam. He's teaching this class. Front row is sitting a guy covered in tattoos. Front row, sitting a guy covered in tattoos, right? So you would think when you first look at him, like, you know, what's this guy's story? You know, what does he have to him? There's got to be something that happened with him in the past, right? So he sees him sitting throughout this entire class, and as the class progresses, it's time for prayer, right? So it's like the third prayer of the day, and these guys are all getting ready to pray, and you see the guy who's full of tattoos, he walks kind of towards the back. So he's standing in the back, and everybody else goes to the front. And as he walks up to the prayer, he pulls out a book from his pocket. And as he begins to pray, he starts reading from the book. And this guy who, you know, wasn't judging him, but he looked at him, he said, you know, he's curious, you know, this guy's got a full body full of tattoos, what's his story? But at the end of the day, he was like everybody else. He had faith. At the end of the day, no matter what, you know, physically his difference was, at the end of the day, he joined the unification, he joined that unity, and he joined the faith. And that's what was kind of surprising to me, is that, you know, it's very easy to single someone out, but you don't always know their background story, right? So I would say externally, but not physically. So that's
Anyone else would they like to?
I think something special about Islam that adds to, I think, our religion is that the community aspect of it. In our version of the Apostolic Creed, which is Surah Al-Fatiha, the opening, like within the first few ayahs, you can see the community aspect of Islam. It says, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, right? And if anybody studied Arabic for more than 2 seconds, you would know that the noon, like, is indicative of like a we. So when you're trying to say like, and we will worship you, so that's what it's trying to say. And I feel like that is really core tenet to Islam, and that is a real core tenet to our faith. And I feel like that is like kind of what Maz was talking about, like the community effort. And so I feel like that is a part of our faith, that external community. And although you can practice Islam in isolation, I think it's best practiced in a community setting.
I think that faith, it is internal, but eventually when it overtakes you, it becomes external, and it has its manifestations in the external that the faith will eventually translate into an external. So if we're taking the example of what Maz was saying, right, of this man who had his tats, and he had, you know, piercing, I don't know. He had some things that were outwardly that wouldn't be classified as being faith, but internally he did have that faith. But if you go further, I mean, he was there. He was there, right? He was physically there in that place of faith, right? So when you know, it's not just, if we're talking about just about clothing, if we're talking about even that, you know, when we become more staunch in our belief, when we truly internalize our beliefs, our limbs have no ability except to follow what our heart wants, except to follow what we submit to ourselves internally. And so that's just what I wanted to say.
When you have it internally, your external kind of shows it, and so your speech is an external attribute, and that's connected to your heart, which is internal. So I feel like it's both. And then this one hadith says, "Some of my servants enter the morning as believers in me and others as disbelievers. Whoever said we have been given rain due to favor and mercy of Allah, he is a believer." So just based off of that, I feel like your faith internally can be based off recognizing Allah and His attributes and how He provides for you, and then also having tawakkul that Allah will care for you, and so it comes off of those things.
So there's two quick stories that I want to share, and then we'll move on. Kind of a surprise was that we have Sister Jenna Corso here, who accepted Islam earlier this year.
It's about a year and a half.
About a year and a half ago. And so what our thing was is that we talked about faith, what is faith, and then kind of the culmination of it as a you know, a true story. So two more examples. Yes.
Can I just add one last thing?
Please.
Even though I already talked, in the break, I remembered something that, you know, we know kind of as most people that we believe that there's a body component and a spiritual soul component to who makes up who we are. And so in a similar manner, I think that if we're talking about internal and external, that in the overarching, you know, Islam, right, our 5 daily prayer is going to Hajj, Zakat, these 5 pillars, right? That's the body of who we are, right? That's the body of Islam. And the soul of Islam is the faith, right? So the soul of Islam, I mean, the faith of Islam is what gives it life, just like our soul gives our body life. If we just do our prayers, if we just go to Hajj, if we do fasting, if we do Zakat, all of these things without the faith, right, it's just an empty shell. But if we have that faith inside of it, that internal component, and then we do the external, then we become a full body, right? And then we're given life to our Islam. Okay.
Exactly. So the point that he just made is actually a perfect introduction to what I'm going to say. Just for your guys' information and something that you guys might want to know is that, you know, the Prophet ﷺ received his prophethood at the age of 40. And he actually passed away at the age of 63. And so all of his miracles, all of his stories, the whole Quran, you know, being compiled, all of his hadith, all of, you know, the system of governing the army, every single economic system, everything that he established before he left this world, he did it in only 23 years. And something that is uncommonly known is that for the first, 23 years, for the first 10 years of those 23 years, prayer was not obligatory on the Muslims. Prayer was not obligatory. And so the point I wanted to make is that prayer, although it connects us to God, it's an external action. And so the Prophet ﷺ spent 10 years reforming the people, teaching them about love, teaching them about love in their heart and connection to God himself. And then he brought forth action. And so the pillars that you see here, the last 4, those came after. But the first one, the faith, is what was the basis, the foundation, the fundamental basic of religion, of God, of love, of believing in God and loving God. And so that's one thing. And then one quick story, and then we're going to have Sister Jenna speak to us, and we'll go through it. And so years after the Prophet ﷺ left this world, the people at the time in Mecca, they recall a story where there was a man holding on to the cloth of the Kaaba in Mecca, the Kaaba in Mecca. He was holding onto the cloth of the Kaaba, and he was crying. And he cried from like sunrise to sunset, and he kept crying and crying and wailing. He was just wailing. He was upset. He was crying and wailing, and then the people were so shocked. They were so taken back. Like, what is wrong with this man? What deed has he done for him to feel so guilty? For him to feel so sorry for himself? And why is he pity on you because you're a sinful soul? And they went and asked him why he was crying, and they found out that this person was down the lineage of the Prophet himself. He was one of the Prophet's grandsons, down many generations, but he was a direct descendant of the Prophet. And he wasn't crying or wailing because he did something, because he sinned. He cried and wailed because he thought he didn't love God, because he didn't have enough love, and he didn't have enough, his belief about God wasn't strong. That he didn't love God, and he didn't do his pious actions for the sake of doing pious actions because he loved God. He did it because it was an external thing. And so that was his fear, that do I love God the right way? Am I close enough to God that I'm doing this solely for the purpose of loving God, or am I doing it as an external action? And so that's why we thought it was a good idea to kind of have a new convert to Islam and kind of tell her story, and to tell her, how this faith came about, and a little bit about her experience. And so I would like to invite Jenna to
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, so I guess I'll just kind of start back at the beginning. I was born in a Christian household, Lutheran, so it's a little bit different from Catholicism, where they don't really emphasize much on Mary kind of as much as the Catholics do. We don't pray over the rosary, that sort of thing. I like to think that my parents are a bit more relaxed in their practice of Christianity, but at the same time, I know their beliefs are very firm, and I know they definitely wanted all of the children to believe Christianity was the true religion. And actually, none of us ended up believing that Christianity was a true religion. My two oldest brothers have, I guess, declared themselves atheists. And I was at that point one time. So growing up with Christianity, I never really believed what I was being told, and I don't know why. I just didn't. I didn't feel it. Going to church, I went to Sunday school, I went to youth group, which is kind of like a teenage form of Sunday school. You hang out with a bunch of teens. And I was confirmed, which is kind of like, I guess, the Islamic form of taking your shahada. But I never ever felt it in my heart. I always thought that I was being told lies, and I don't know why. I never really had a good enough reason to believe that. I just knew I didn't feel it. So for a while, I guess, leading up to my conversion, which was about 1.5 years ago, it was the summer of 2013, I was kind of feeling like there wasn't a God at all, because I knew Christianity just didn't line up. Things just didn't match up. Anytime I would ask somebody to explain the Trinity to me, I got 5 different answers, all from the same person. So I couldn't understand why they just couldn't explain it to me in a straightforward way. And when I would ask other questions about Christianity, it was always a different answer from somebody else, and nobody really knew what the right answer was. Everybody always talked about just having faith, just don't think about it, which didn't really make much sense to me, because I thought if there's a religion from God, He'd want us to be able to comprehend it. So for a while, I would say probably about 4 or 5 years, I was considering myself to be like an atheist. I just thought there must not be a God because this just doesn't make any sense. So I met my first Muslim when I was at work, actually. And I was just curious because he kind of acted weird in the workplace. Like, for those of you who know a good Muslim guy, he doesn't want to talk to girls. He doesn't want to hang out. He doesn't want to shake hands. And he's not cool with eating lunch with you on break. So that was just weird because he was working in an area of the workplace with all women. And I was just really curious, like, dude, why are you so weird? So I did that. I actually went up to him and I just asked him, like, why do you act so weird? Like, why are you like this? And he was explaining, I'm Muslim. He's like, I have more respect for women, so I just don't cross certain boundaries. So then I became curious about Islam. And I should probably say my parents are super hardcore conservative, Fox News watchers. So if you guys understand, if you guys have ever watched the Bill O'Reilly Factor and just listened to one excerpt of what they've said about Islam, it's not good. So I was also raised in that environment, and I too thought all Muslims are terrorists. They're nuts. they oppress women, they beat women, women don't have lives, they can't get an education, they can't think for themselves. So this is what I was brought up thinking. So when I found out that he was Muslim, then I'm like really curious. Okay, so I started asking him, why do you believe what you believe? And he kind of just said, well, I just do. And I couldn't, again, I'm thinking, okay, so again, these people with religion, they don't know what they're talking about. They can't give me a straightforward answer. But then he started kind of answering some more direct questions that I had. Like when I said, Christians believe this, you guys believe this, who's right and what? He had evidence, he had historical evidence, he had scientific evidence, and he had basic coherent thoughts that I could follow. So I started to become interested in thinking like, okay, so maybe this is right, maybe it's not. So I started to do a little bit of my own research. He even bought me a Quran, so I read that cover to cover in like a period of 2 months. I just dove in and I'm like, I gotta know. So I started to come across more and more questions, and I think I struggled a lot with understanding why Islam told people to do things so much. Like, why did Islam have to dictate every single part of your life? That really annoyed me. And as I kind of grew into like learning more about Islam, I kind of realized that there must be a reason for this sort of thing. So the first question that I was really battling with was hijab. Like, why do women have to cover? And of course, I thought that it was just something oppressive. The men make the women cover themselves as a form of oppression. But this person who I was talking to told me, well, the main reason that women cover is because God told them to do so. It's just a basic thing. When God commands you to do something, if you believe in God and you believe that you should be obeying Him, you just do it. But I always thought, you know, there has to be a reason behind it. Why would He tell you to do something like that? And then I learned all the benefits from it, which you guys have heard before, you know. Helps a lot with fornication, zina, you know, and it definitely helps a lot with giving women status so that they're not just an object, treated like an object, which is so common here in America when women are plastered half naked on billboards. So I started to ask more and more of those technical questions like, why do you guys have to pray? Why can't you drink alcohol? Why can't you eat pork? And the answers that I was getting started to make more and more sense to me. And so finally, I started to get to this point where I was like, okay, so I think I believe everything that I'm being told, and I think I believe everything that I've been reading and hearing about Islam, but I still wasn't really sure about taking that step. So I think I knew that I was a Muslim for about a month before I actually took my Shahada. I don't know what was holding me back. I think it was the fear of my parents, because I knew my parents would not be okay with it. And I think it was also the fear of being labeled as an outsider, because in this country, many people are not friendly toward Muslims and they don't have a good view of Muslims. So finally, this person that I met at work, he just sat me down one day and he drew a little circle and he wrote Islam in the middle of it. And he drew another circle on the outside of that circle and he said, this is you and this is Islam. And he's like, you believe everything that's in the circle, but you're not going into the circle. Why? And I just thought, I don't know. I just didn't feel like I was ready to do it. I knew it was right. I knew it was the truth, but I just didn't understand how to get to the point where I could fully jump into it and say, okay, yes, I want to do this. So finally, after he did some talking with me, he convinced me to go to the masjid, ICN, actually, Islamic Center in Naperville, where I met my first Muslim, or I guess my first Muslim woman who was full covering hijab. And I started asking her a ton of questions. And then I felt like so welcome in the masjid. Everybody was just so nice to me, like right off the bat. And even this woman that I met, she introduced me to people as her friend. She's like, this is my friend Jenna. And I'm like, I just met you, don't call me your friend. But she was so nice to me, and everybody was so happy to see me. And I didn't go in there wearing a scarf either, so people probably knew, you know, like, oh, this girl's probably thinking about becoming a Muslim. And people were just so inviting. They wanted to talk to me. They wanted to ask me questions. They wanted to know about my life. And I never got that from Christians in a church ever. Even like growing up in the church, people just weren't friendly. I feel like there were a lot of cliques in church. And you were just kind of friends with the people that your parents are friends with. You were friends with the kids of those parents. But with Muslims, it's like you can see a Muslim walking down the street and you can say salam to them and it's cool. And you can go into the masjid and you can just start talking to people and they're cool with it. You don't have to know the person, you can just have a conversation with them. So that really drew me more into the community. And I finally went home that night and decided that I wanted to pray. And this was the first time I had prayed in probably like 5 or 6 years. And after I prayed, I just kind of felt like I knew for sure at this point that I was Muslim. I knew, okay, I believe everything. It totally makes sense. This has to be the true religion. So I got invited to an event, which, if you guys know who Sheikh Omar Suleiman is, he came to ICN that summer, summer of 2013, to teach an Al-Maghrib class. And I was invited to that seminar to take my Shahada on that Friday when they actually started off that seminar. And at the time, I didn't realize what a big deal it was. I was just like, okay, I'm gonna go say this, and then I guess it officially makes me Muslim. So like, I got up on stage in front of like 400 people, and I was speaking this horrible Arabic. And everybody was like so happy as soon as I was done. I got off the stage, and like thousands of people, it felt like, were coming up to hug me. Like all the women wanted to hug me. Everybody was handing me their numbers with their names. Call me if you ever need anything. I even got like this little goodie bag with a prayer rug and a Quran and like tons of books to read about Islam. So I just felt like immediately like I was part of the family there, and that was really awesome. And I think that without the community aspect of the religion, I really would not have taken the jump to actually taking my Shahada. So after that, I guess, I didn't tell anyone that I converted. I didn't tell my friends, and I definitely did not tell my parents. And I was living as a Muslim with my parents for a year and a half. And they did not know, they had no clue. Well, I think like my mom probably had a hint. She had a hunch. She knew I was thinking about Islam, but I never told her that I had officially become a Muslim. And I had converted before my senior year of high school. So my mom started to see the changes. Like, I didn't go to homecoming that year, and I had gone to every single dance that our high school had held. I didn't go to homecoming that year because I'm like, there's no way I'm doing that this time. And then when my senior prom came around, I didn't go to that, and my mom was like, what is wrong with you, you know? And I also used to be a cheerleader, so my mom was expecting me to be like super outgoing and social with everybody, but I kind of withdrew my senior year because I just didn't want to be around the people in my school. Like, I just wasn't comfortable anymore being around Muslims because I felt like I had to pretend to be another person. So, and by the way, I live in like a corn town, so I think I knew of like one other Muslim that went to my high school, and I never talked to him. He was never in any of my classes. So I had nobody that I could talk to, and I knew that if I had told my friends, they would have thought I was crazy, because I used to be friends with the people who are like, what's a good word for this, like homegrown hicks. We used to wear boots and jeans to school, and we all drove pickup trucks, and our brothers were cool because they had shotguns and they went hunting. So we used to make fun of Muslims. And I thought if I even told them that I was thinking about Islam, they would think that I'm psycho, and then be like, that's it, like, you're done. But as I started to kind of withdraw, they didn't even make an effort to say like, hey, what's going on, and try to pull me back. So that was kind of a downer too. I went through a really rough time my senior year, my first year as a Muslim, because I felt like I didn't have anybody to talk to. The nearest masjid was like 45 minutes away, and I couldn't leave easily like and tell my parents, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to Tawheed tonight during Ramadan, and I'm gonna pray until 3 o'clock in the morning. Like I couldn't do that. So I felt really withdrawn, and a lot of times I was having like really up and down feelings about faith. Like, I knew that Islam was the truth, I knew it was the right religion, I just didn't know if I wanted to do it anymore because I was so depressed about the situation that I was in. So that's one of the reasons that I had decided to actually come to BenU. It was not even like on my list until I think like a month before applications were due for college, and then I finally said, I'm just going to go to BenU because I know a lot of Muslims are there, and I'm going to make a lot of Muslim friends. So that's one of the reasons that I just kind of jumped into Benedictine. And I actually started wearing hijab here because I started living on campus, so now that I wasn't at home, I could wear hijab. And that also, I think, played into helping me like get out of that rut that I was in, because now I was comfortable with myself, I was comfortable being covered, and I could talk to people. I was around people who understood me. I met really good Muslims that I'm friends with now and that I hang out with on a regular basis. So I feel like, in general, if you ever feel like you're struggling with your faith, get involved in the community. Immerse yourself in the community. Talk to people, because I could talk to any random person, any random Muslim that I know is a good Muslim, and they'll understand me, and they'll listen, and they'll help me. I don't have to be close friends with them for them to actually get me out of my, whatever the situation is that I'm dealing with. So I'm actually really glad that I made the decision to come to the school, because I think if I didn't, I would be super depressed even more. But that's basically, I guess, the gist of my story. If you guys have any questions, go ahead. No?
Wait, so you didn't know actually Muslim?
Yeah, sorry. I told my parents. I told my parents that I'm Muslim in January. I made it my New Year's resolution because I thought if I didn't pick a date, I was never gonna do it. So yeah, I did tell them like, hey, so there's something that I've been wanting to tell you guys for a while. And then I was like, I'm a Muslim. And then there was like an entire 60 seconds of an awkward silence of my mom staring at me like I had turned into an alien. And then the first words that she said to me actually were, well, I'm really sorry that you made that decision because you've completely ruined your life. So after I took my Shahada though, I felt like really compelled to just dive into the religion and just start doing everything that I needed to do, like start praying 5 times a day. And like I said, start covering. So I think once I kind of took the jump into taking Shahada, I made it public and I made it known, so then it's like people expected something different of me. And that played into how I expressed myself and kind of how it changed me a lot for sure, you know? And that's not really anything that I struggled with after I took my Shahada though, like doing everything that I needed to do. Because once I took my Shahada, I knew that I was a Muslim and I knew that God was real, God gave us laws we need to follow, and I just decided I'm just gonna do it.
So, kind of as a convert, what do you think? Most of us have, like, I mean, we might have an internal conversion, but we don't have, you know, we were born into Islam. So what do you think we might take for granted that you kind of had to struggle for?
I don't know, because I used to think that it was that you guys were born into a Muslim families, you know? So you guys, one of the things that I really envied, like, after I converted, was that I couldn't wear hijab. So I really envied girls who were wearing hijab. And I'm like, they have it so easy because their parents are cool with them wearing hijab, and they're cool with them praying and, like, being this awesome Muslim person. But I slowly realized that there are actually a lot of Muslim families who aren't okay with their daughters wearing hijab. They don't want their daughters to wear hijab. And a lot of girls have had to make that decision on their own to go against their parents' wishes and make that decision. So I guess really the one thing that I would say you guys take for granted is, from a woman's perspective, the rights that you have. Because like I said, I always thought you guys didn't have rights, but after becoming a Muslim and learning about women's rights, that is something that for sure you guys take for granted, because you can marry somebody who's a good Muslim man. You have the option to say who you want to marry, and you can make sure that he's a good Muslim man who's going to uphold your rights. There's no guarantee for that with any other religion or any other way of life, because there just aren't men out there who are not religious like a Muslim man is, to say that they will uphold a woman's rights, they will treat her right, they will not physically abuse her or verbally abuse her, and they will take care of her. Like, before being a Muslim, I didn't have the right to say that, yes, a man has to provide me with an education, he has to provide me with food and clothing and anything that I feel is necessary for my life, and all of the extra things that I want. If any Muslim woman were to go to, say, a Christian man or an atheist man and say those things, they would say, you're crazy, get a job and take care of yourself, even if you're married. So I would say for sure, if you guys have the option, I know there are still families out there who try to force their daughters to marry people. Try to marry a good Muslim man. Fight your parents and say, I do not want to marry this person. I know that there are girls, I've met girls, I've talked to girls who cannot marry the man that they want to marry, and their parents make them marry somebody else. Do not let that happen. Find a good Muslim man who's going to uphold your rights, and do not ever take that for granted.
I apologize, I kind of came in a little late, but I did have a question. I go to a school where there's a lot of non-Muslims. I mean, I'm talking about like only 10 Muslims out of like a 1,500 people campus. So I think my question is kind of like, if you're trying to, what about Islam kind of attracted you, and if you're trying to get about like the beauty of Islam out to non-Muslims, how would you kind of go about doing that? So what exactly about
Yeah.
Islam kind of attracted you to Islam?
Well,
Was there, like,
really,
that one
like I said this at the beginning, like I was just curious about the person that I met who was Muslim because he was weird. So what attracted me was that Muslims in general are just weird considering everybody else in society and the way that everybody else acted. So I actually went to him and said, like, why are you so weird? I was kind of really rude and straightforward about it, actually. And my intention was to go and convert him. So it completely backfired on me. But I don't know that there's any easy way to get people to come to Islam. Like, with my family, talking with my parents is like super difficult. My mom does not want to hear anything about Islam. She doesn't want to hear anything about Muslims because she thinks they're all terrorists. So I haven't really had the chance to actually talk to like other Muslims about Islam and, you know, like give dawah and say like this is why Islam is so awesome. And I think I have had that opportunity like once or twice maybe, but there are some people who you guys know that like, their hearts are sealed, and it's like you just can't get through to them, and I can't understand what they can't understand about Islam. So I would say go about it gently and definitely provide people with like the facts, the history, and I love pointing out like Quranic miracles to people because that's stuff that you can't make up, like the stuff with the embryo and like with mountains being like pegs, you know. These are things that science did not even come near to proving until just recently. So if you point these things out to people, I think people will be more compelled to come to the religion because a lot of people have heard things from Christianity or like atheist parents who say that religion is crazy and they just make stuff up. If you show them that there's like historical and scientific evidences, people will be more compelled to actually listen to you.
Okay. What can we do to like, because you had that kind of post-conversion, I guess, discussion. Like I know a lot of converts kind of after the whole hugging and, you know, and then they go home and then kind of, there's like this kind of low period that they have to like go through. What do you think we could do to kind of help with, I don't know, with that process or another process?
Yeah. Well, actually, somebody asked me not too long ago, they said like, hey, you're a convert. I said, yeah, and they were like, I know a couple of other converts, and I was just wondering like, how can I help them through a rough situation, you know, similar to that. People always like hand their number to a convert with their name on it and say, call me if you ever need anything. And you know that they sincerely mean it. You could call them and tell them that you're going through a divorce and they would listen to you. You know that they sincerely mean it. But I was never comfortable, and I don't think any person would ever be comfortable talking to a stranger by just calling them and saying like, hey, I'm having a rough time, can I talk to you? So what I would say to recommend to do is force those people to come to you by inviting them to your house or inviting them out to eat, by forming a bond with them. Don't say, oh, text me. You text them, you call them, you get in their business, and make it very straightforward that you want to have a relationship with them, that you want to be friends with them, and that you are a person who's there when they really need it. Don't just hand your number over to them and say, call me when you need it. Don't do that. You know, get in their business. Like you said, really get into their personal life and make yourself a part of their life, and then they will be way more, way more likely to get help from you, way more likely to talk to you.
So I had a friend who, I guess kind of how you said you were Muslim like a month before you actually like took the Shahada. So she's been, I guess, Muslim for like the past year, but and she's a senior, just how you are, and so she's really afraid to take the Shahada before she's 18 because she thinks like, you know, her parents will like freak.
Yeah.
So every time she like mentions Islam, her parents think she's like possessed by the demon or something. So, and then I tried having her talk to like other converts, you know, who can sympathize with her. But just like how you said, like she was like, I'm not comfortable talking to strangers, you know. So what do you think I can tell her, like to help her with her parents?
Yeah, like I said, it's just really hard with parents because parents expect so much from their children, and when their children go against them, immediately they don't want to hear anything that their kids have to say. They just want their kids to listen to them. With a situation like that, I would first, like I said, try to establish a bond with her. Try to like invite her out with your other Muslim friends, you know, like make her a part of the group, talk to her on a more personal level, and then slowly start giving her advice about like how to approach parents, because they can, like my parents were super aggressive and I still can't get through to them. So I would say, really, if her parents are not going to listen, tell her, just give it a break for a while. Don't keep pushing, just give it a break and let her parents come to her to talk to her when they're ready. Because I think that's the stage that my parents are in right now, is that they just don't want to hear anything about Islam. But I know eventually they're going to become curious and they're going to want to know, okay, so now, who are you, what is your life? They can't just keep quiet forever. So if they're aggressive like that, just tell her, give it a rest, and then let them come to her.
We have like time for one more question, and then I'm gonna Good? Okay. Thank you so much. I actually do really sincerely encourage everybody to get to know her. She's a gem in our community, and she's praying all of us. So definitely get to know her and benefit from her. So we're going to be praying. Maghrib is exactly at 7:08. So we're going to meet 4th floor and pray there, inshallah. So just do wudu and we'll try to start on time. Thank you guys so much for coming. Oh, yeah, food too. So after you pray, we're going to be back in this room. Let's aim for like 7:25, 7:30. Try to head back, and then we got,